And my name, I guess I'm left. My name is Nicole. I am the Deputy Executive Director at Help CDC. We are so glad that all of you could join us today. With this is a very important topic that we wanted to get on and share with you because there are a lot of things that are going to be happening in the next few months. And we just wanted to establish a place where everyone can come and get their questions answered. So you have Camilo here. He's super smart. He's got a big brain in there, and he's got a lot of answers when it comes to housing. He's a housing attorney. So Camilo, why don't you tell them a little bit about what you do over there at Legal Aid?
Thank you guys for having me. Like I was introduced, I'm Camilo Parra. I'm a legal aid attorney at the Legal Aid Society of the Orange County Bar Association. I'm the newest housing attorney. I do dabble in consumer protection. So that's stuff like wage garnishments, debts. The idea is our office helps the impoverished communities, people who just can't afford an attorney, people who need help with areas ranging from family law to consumer protection to housing. Housing is currently the biggest topic on everyone's minds right now. And we also actually have a guardian ad litem department. So we enforce the rights of children throughout Orange County. And I invite anyone who is living in Orange County and who is having some sort of legal issue, please reach out to us, give us a call. Our services are completely free, and we are happy to see if we can assist you in any way. A lot of times we can't assist, but we do at least try to point you in the right direction. Just because it's something we don't do doesn't mean we're not going to try to at least get you a phone number or somebody to contact.
Awesome.
So we do have a video that I'm trying to pull up for you guys. Few technical difficulties on this end. But can we just have a quick conversation about like what the CDC moratorium is? Can you explain to them, to our audience, when it started, like some basic information about it?
Absolutely. So a lot of people have not heard about this yet. A lot of people, when they hear CDC moratorium, and I'm telling you from experience, the vast majority of my clients, they don't know what that is, and I don't blame them. It's very new. It came out September 4th. It's our most recent, and at this point, pretty much our only protection from an eviction for the non-payment of rent. Now, it's a federal order. The CDC is the Center for Disease Control. They're a federal agency, so it should be protecting everyone across the country. This isn't a Florida-specific thing. What is going to vary a lot, where you're going to see a little bit of differences throughout the country, is how it's actually being applied. Now, I can tell you guys how not so much where, but how Orange County, the clerk of courts of Orange County is handling it. But you're going to see that there's actually a lot of variation from county to county as to exactly how it's applied. But just like most of the protections that we've had throughout the pandemic that we're going through right now, it's really important to remember that it's not automatic. That might be, if there's one thing I want everyone to remember today is please remember, it is not automatic. You can't just kind of sit back and expect it to protect you. You have to take affirmative action to actually get some protections under it. So everyone here, I'm guessing, like myself, either owns a home or is renting from somebody. I'm renting from somebody. I am a tenant. Show of hands, who here is a tenant just like me?
Right here.
Most of us here are probably tenants. And that's why tonight we're going to focus mainly on preventing evictions and how to combat evictions. I will touch lightly on kind of, and I hope we'll all be able to address how mortgages are being affected by the pandemic and some relief that is out there. But I think most of our conversation tonight is going to be about how to prevent evictions and what options we have right now. Because just frankly, more of us are tenants than actually are property owners.
Right.
Yes.
So actually, if we have a little time, and then if I have a chance to kind of go over some really common legal issues before we jump into the CDC, would that be okay with you guys?
Sure, go ahead.
All right, so I have a question, and this is for everyone here tonight. How many of us have an actual written lease? Like literally, you have something you signed and it says you're supposed to. I do too, but not all of us do. In fact, most of my clients do not have written leases. Most of my clients, they either had one back in the day, it's expired, they never signed a new one, or they never had one to begin with. So what does that mean for them? It means a lot. Most importantly, if you don't have a written lease, and I don't tell you this to stress you out, I don't tell you this to scare you. This is, I want to make sure you know what's going on. I want to make sure you know
That's
your
good to
rights.
know. Yes.
If you don't have a written lease, your rights to the property itself are very limited. And how limited your rights are actually depend on how often you're paying rent. So
Mm.
I'll use myself as an example. When I was in college, I was renting out a room. I had no written lease. I was just paying them every month, month to month. That's the most common situation for most.
Froze.
In fact, for some people, it might even be the best option because maybe you don't know if you want to stay there for too long. Maybe you exactly. Yeah. So maybe some people here are like, I like being able to leave, pretty much at a moment's notice. So for those guys, okay, maybe it's a good move. But oh, and Ruben, I see you've told us you're a resident. But I thought you were told us if you were a tenant with a lease or without a lease. And you guys don't have to tell us whether you have leases or not, but just know that if you don't have a lease and you're paying monthly, or anyone you know doesn't have a lease and is paying their rent monthly, you're about 15 days away from maybe not being there the next month. It's not quite that simple. It's not like they can just tell you, hey, 15 days from now, you got to get out. It's not that simple, but it's close. The way to look at it is this: whenever your rent is due, whatever day you typically pay rent, as long as Ruben signed his life away,
Sign your life away.
which is good. Leases are good. I like leases because there's security, there's stability in leases. You know what to expect. Just make sure you read it, Ruben. That's a big mistake.
Right.
Don't know what's in their lease, and that is dreadful. But so let's say you're like one of the many of us that don't have a written lease. They're just paying every month. If your landlord gives you a letter one day saying, look, this is the last month. I need you to be out by the beginning of the next month. As long as that letter came 15 days away from the next day your rent is due, that's completely legit. It's completely legitimate.
Wow.
And that's one thing that a lot of my clients do not know about. And they are utterly shocked to find out that if their landlord's not being nice and not giving them the most amount of time, most amount of notice possible, they might literally be 15 days away from getting put out. So that's just a big plug that I don't think enough people understand that. And I don't think enough people hear about that. Please be aware, if you don't have a written lease and you're fine with that level of kind of instability, fine. Because it goes both ways, by the way. So like if you want to tell your landlord, hey, we don't have a written lease. I pay you every month. This is my last month. I want to get out of here. You just got to give them that 15-day written notice. Remember, it's 15 days away from the next time that rent is due. So like, for example, if I got that letter on the 16th of this month, bad example, because there's 31 days in December. If I got that letter on the 17th of this month, it'd be too late. They can't pass the 17th of this month. There's not 15 days left in this month.
Right.
Okay.
Got it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I hope that helps some people to avoid some really messy
Good
situations.
information.
That's
They-
really
So
good
basically, they
information.
can do that.
They can certainly do that.
So they can actually, if as long as it's 15 days before the time of you making your first, your next payment, they can tell you to leave. And if you don't leave, then they can start the eviction process, or it's an automatically 24-hour notice that you get
No.
and have to be
Thank
out.
God. That would be terrible if that was the case. You are right that they have to go through the courts. That's another
Okay.
thing. A lot of people maybe don't realize that you can, as long as you're an actual tenant, like as long as you actually pay rent and have, whether it's written or not, but a lease, and by lease, I mean, you're paying someone for the right to stay on their property. If you're a tenant, the courts have to be involved in your removal. They can't force you out. They can't start shutting off your lights. They can't start, they can't
Locking the doors.
They can't throw your stuff to the street. All of that is prohibited by Florida law. In fact, it's one of the few parts of Florida statute that both benefits the tenant and actually has teeth. What I mean by that is, in theory, if your landlord is engaging in prohibited practices and you can prove it, you may actually be able to have a lawsuit against them. Now, I never encourage people to just sue people because lawsuits are expensive. They're kind of messy. They can also completely backfire. Like, for example, I knew of a client back in the day who he actually, in my eyes, I thought had a pretty good claim for damages because his landlord had definitely broken the law by going ahead and turning off his lights. But there was a lot of the story that he left out. And when he couldn't get me to sue this guy.
That usually happens.
I don't sue people just to sue them. I enforce people's rights. That's what our office does.
Right.
We don't come after people for money, really. We're just trying to make sure people aren't getting, taken advantage of. So this guy took it upon himself to go ahead and sue this guy. He was dead set on it. And unfortunately, when he got it in court, he actually lost and ended up owing the landlord money. So I don't tell you that to discourage you from enforcing your rights.
That really backfired.
Yeah, so just don't jump to conclusions, and just really the moral of this story is if your landlord's doing that sort of thing, please, please, please call a legal aid organization. Find out where your local legal aid organization is. Call them, let them know that's what's going on. Also, make an incident report. That's not the kind of thing you call 911 unless you're in danger. Then that's different. If the landlord's threatening you with violence, call 911. But if it's like he or she threw your stuff out on the lawn or has changed the locks on your property, that's something where maybe you could call the sheriff's non-emergency line and let them know that's going on. You want to have that as some sort of evidence. You want to have a report of that. God forbid if you have to go to court and defend yourself.
What about if it's subtle though, if it's intimidation, especially with women? You hear those things pop up where, he's making the woman feel uncomfortable, or the landlord. What could they do in that situation?
Good question.
That is a great question. And unfortunately, a very real question in that happens all the time. That's so common. People get intimidated by their landlord. They get threats. I mean, there's threats of violence. We've actually seen actual violence even.
Wow.
That's tricky. What I would say is that's still a situation where you should be reaching out to your legal aid organization. If the harassment is so bad that it's basically interfering with your enjoyment to the property, I would say that there's definitely something there. Maybe it could be viewed as, so there's a catch-all, and there's a list of rules that the landlord's not supposed to do. And actually, now's a great time to put a link in here, a link to a summary of landlord-tenant rights.
Awesome. I will share this on Facebook as well.
Please do. I don't expect everyone to sit down and read every single Florida statute about landlord-tenant law. I don't think I've even done that. There's just too much. But this is a really good summary of what your rights are and what the tenant's rights are in Florida. It was produced by the Florida Bar. Check it out. It has some of the list of things that the landlord's not supposed to do. There is one thing in there that is what we call like a catch-all. It's so kind of broad that a lot of things could be that. And so let me actually try to find it in here. Oh, it'll take forever. The idea is just that the landlord is doing something that is not allowing you to reasonably access the property. I'll give you a perfect example, actually. I had a client who is disabled, and the landlord knew she needed the front door to get in the house. It's the only way she could possibly get in the house because of her disability. So what did this guy do? And I laugh, but I shouldn't. It's terrible. He made it so that the front door was the one part of the house that could not be entered. He had other tenants, but he was targeting her. And so what he was doing is he was making it so that everyone else could still get in and out, but he was making it basically impossible for her to get in and out.
Wow.
If it was anyone else he was doing that to, maybe you couldn't say this is an actual lockout because there's like a back door, there's a side door, there's other ways to get in the house. But for her, there was no reasonable way for her to access the property. So that's just an example of how something that maybe doesn't perfectly fit the word of the law, like getting harassed constantly by your landlord, may not perfectly fit what the law actually says, but there's an argument there. So reach out to a legal aid organization and see if maybe they can, at the very least, give you a consult, let you know what your rights are. In some cases, I know when people call my office, I can't always represent everyone. I don't have enough time. We don't have the resources, but there are many times where we can at least pick up the phone and try to, talk some sense into the landlord, maybe write a letter, maybe try to find a pro bono attorney who has more time, who has more resources, who can take.
Right.
So the idea here is just know you have to actually take action to enforce your rights, and know that there's legal aid organizations out there that can help you. And here's actually a link to the legal aid organizations throughout the state. Please visit this and see if there's any group that serves your area who may be able to help you with your legal concern. Know that all of them are very different. They all practice different things. They have different eligibility requirements, but it's worth picking up the phone to find out,
Awesome.
Awesome.
I appreciate it. That's good stuff.
Good
No
stuff.
problem.
Yes.
Sandra, do you have any questions coming through on your side?
There's a question. Is there an eviction moratorium in Florida?
I'm so glad they asked, because it's about time we jumped into that. So the answer, in short, not really. And why do I say that? Because by its very definition, the word moratorium means something is prohibited. It means something can't happen. That's not true. You can get evicted in Florida right now, but it's a little harder than usual to get evicted.
Oh.
How is it harder? There's limited relief for certain tenants from certain types of evictions. And I know that for a lot of people, it sounds like I just said nothing.
Right.
I literally didn't tell you anything. You know less now than you did before I spoke. So let me try to clear that up. Let me try to clear that up. I actually have a brief PowerPoint that hopefully will help us out figure out what we actually do have as far as protections go in Florida. That's the last page. And actually, that's fine since this is here now. Can you guys see the links to resources page? Is that what we're seeing?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
This is
Yes.
a list of the two of the links I've already shared, and I'm going to make sure that the other two make it into the chat. And if anyone watching right now or anyone watching later, if you forget everything I said, just at least look at these links, check these web pages out. They're full of really good information. So let's go to what we're talking about. It's the actual CDC order. So we talked about it briefly earlier, then we got sidetracked, but it's okay. I think it was good discussion. The CDC order, it's the CDC, first of all, is a federal agency. In September, they came out with an order that is helpful. It is helpful. It is helping a lot of families stay in their rental property for at least a little longer, but it's not perfect. First,
Right.
not perfect about it is it's not automatic. You can't just sit back and expect it to protect you. There's an affirmative act that the tenant has to take to be protected by it. And luckily, it's very simple. All you have to do is get your hands on a CDC declaration. It's a one-page document. You can Google it. It's one of the links that I put in there. You could Google it. You could literally Google CDC declaration right now. Chances are it's the first thing that'll pop up. Open it, read it. It's short. Make sure all of it is true though, because if it's not all true, you could actually get in trouble for that. So just make sure all of it is true before you sign it. Because when you sign it, you're swearing everything on there is true. It's an affidavit.
Like on the road, okay.
Yeah, you're swearing it's all true. And once you've signed it and given it to your landlord, it does give you some protection. So I'll just read this slide because I made it. So CDC order, what does it do for tenants? If a tenant is a covered tenant, I use that language because that's literally what the order says. You have to be a covered tenant. Then depending on where you are throughout the state, so depending on literally where you live and how your courts are applying this order, it'll give you some relief. But the next point here, right after the part where I put variation and application amongst jurisdictions, I realize now that that's not how normal people talk. So I apologize. That really should just say it kind of changes depending on where you're at. The next bullet point, it says prevents actual eviction, physical removal of a tenant for the non-payment of rent through 12/31/2020, unless extended. So unless, yes, exactly. It's not a lot of time. Unless by some miracle it gets extended, we only have those protections through the 31st But in
Wow.
order to get it, you have to actually become a protected tenant. You have to sign that CDC declaration. So here I went a little more into detail as to who is actually covered. You have to be a residential tenant. So you can't just be a guest. You have to actually pay rent. You have to have a right to be in the property. You have to be a tenant, residential tenant. So
Does that mean if I have mail coming there, then I can be considered as a residential?
I hope you are. I know I am, but I haven't read your lease agreement and I don't know all the complexities of whether or not you are or aren't, but almost everyone is. A common example of who might not be would be like someone who maybe is in a hotel and has only been there like a couple days. That's going to be really tough to prove that you're actually a residential tenant. So to become a covered tenant, you got to first be a residential tenant. Then you have to actually sign the CDC declaration. You have to give it to your landlord. And then you have to be able to prove you did that. I wish we lived in a world where that wasn't.
Like a selfie picture, like,
I
look,
know,
I'm
right?
handing it to the
Wow.
guy.
How about email?
That's great. So those are all great ideas in that. Let's start with the email because that's what I recommend for everyone. If you can email it, please email it. If you can send it as a text, please send it as a text. Because those are things you can prove pretty
A
easily.
record of it.
So
Do
just
you
a
have
paper
to do a
trail.
red receipt?
Paper trail, exactly. I wish there was a world, or we lived in a world where you could just give it to your landlord and then not worry about it anymore. But that's not the case. We've seen landlords dodge these things. We've seen landlords avoid service. We've seen landlords lose it. So the idea is give it to them multiple ways if you can, and make sure you can prove you actually did it. The simplest thing, email it, text it. Let's say that's not an option. Maybe your landlord doesn't have that much, technological like whereabouts. Maybe you could do the selfie option. I like that. I think that's good. Hand it to them, snap a picture. Just
Like you're graduating.
just like that. Just be able to prove you've done it.
Or record.
Or
Or record, yeah.
But don't you need
Excellent,
permission to
excellent.
record people? I mean, you
Oh.
don't stand your ground. This is Florida.
Right.
Good question.
to be fair, the recording does have a lot of issues with it. One big issue is it's kind of harder to get a recording into evidence in court than a document. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend the recording unless it was like the only option. But it's messier to submit to evidence. And also you have a good point. You're not supposed to be recording people in Florida without their permission.
Right. I do have a question. They just wanted to know the phone number of how they can be able to reach the office.
Of the Legal Aid Society?
Yes.
It's really embarrassing. I don't have it memorized. I'm going to Google it.
I think it's 836-7610. I'll Google it, Camilla. You go
That
ahead.
sounds right. That actually sounds right.
You're honest. We're
Oh,
live
no.
and we're honest, everybody.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. That's one thing you'll come to find out. And maybe if you do get us on the phone, you see we're very honest. We're very blunt. Sometimes it might come off as like we're giving some really harsh news, but guys, we got to be honest with you guys. We got to make sure you know exactly what's going on. So
We're in that business.
I found it. Yes.
Okay. Can you throw that in the chat for us?
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you.
Remember, that's Orange County. Of all the eligibility requirements, we do have quite a bit, but they're very generous. I think you'll see most people will qualify. One we can't be flexible on is you gotta be in Orange County, or at least have a case that somehow is like tied in Orange County. So like really the only situation I can think of where that'll come up is maybe you moved away, but you're still being sued here in Orange County. That we might actually help. The idea is if you're an Orange County resident, call us. Dial 0. Let us know what you'll get an operator. Let us know what type of area of law you need help with. They'll set you up with an application. It's going to be a bit of a process. Someone's got to call you back, give you an intake call. They'll ask you a bunch of questions. And then after that, if you've been approved, you'll finally get a call from an attorney. The whole process could take 2 to 3 days. So please don't waste time. If you're worried about this stuff now, whether there's a court case, no court case, you're not behind in rent yet, you're about to be behind in rent, there is no time to waste. Get on the phone, call us if you're in Orange County. If you're in any other county, remember that list of legal aid organizations, call them or the one that will serve your area and see if they can help. Now, I lost the train of thought. We were talking about, okay, so just making sure they have the document, make sure they have it. Now, what does the document actually say? Because I don't want you guys just signing things and not, not know what you're agreeing.
Right.
Exactly.
Yes.
Thank
That's-
And
you.
we're gonna say the legal guy told us to do it.
He just said the Lord.
Don't do that, because technically when you're signing this, you're swearing it's true under penalty of perjury. Can you guys see the slide here about what is a CDC declaration?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So first of all, what is it? It's a sworn written statement. That's what an affidavit is, a sworn written statement. You're swearing this is all true. On the side is the actual document. I realize it's a little bit stretched out, kind of funny looking, but I had to make it fit in the slide. The first 5 statements think of them as your eligibility requirements. By signing it, you're swearing that those 5 statements are true in your case. Then last 3, 6 through 8, are limitations. It's the declaration is trying to explain to the tenant, what are the limitations of this order? What does this order not do for me? And by signing it, you're swearing you understand that. And we'll go a little more into the limitations, because that's where a lot of people, I don't blame them. This isn't the best written document ever. There's a lot of parts there that are easy to not understand. The first 5 statements are really straightforward, though. Let's actually real quick just go through them. You'll see most people will actually qualify. The first one is, I've used best efforts to obtain all government assistance for rent or housing. That just means you're trying, you're doing everything you can to get help, and the key words there are best effort. Everyone's best efforts are a little bit different from one another's, what I mean? So like if there's a sweet little old lady who doesn't even know how to use a computer and all she's done is like apply for unemployment, maybe for her, that's her best effort. She has no access to any of this stuff. I don't think she should stop there. I think she should, try and get all the help she can. But the idea is there's words there that mean something, best efforts. So just as long as you're doing what you can to get help, you still qualify. The next one, this next one is really long and it has 3 parts, but you only have to qualify for the first part. And all of us are going to qualify for that first part. I'm almost certain of it. The first one is, you don't expect to earn more than $99,000. I wish I was.
No.
All of us wish we were. Very few of us are. God bless those of us who are. The idea is, if you can swear that you're not making more than that this year, you're still qualified. The next one, I'm unable to pay my rent because of substantial loss of income. And then it has a few different reasons you can have the loss of income. But the idea here is, you're not just not paying rent because you don't want to. You're not paying the rent because you can't, because there's some sort of hardship.
I'm off the kitchen.
They're pretty generous about the types of hardships. Notice nothing there says that it has to be COVID-19 related. That's a huge misconception. A lot of people think, well, I lost my job, but it has nothing to do with COVID-19. Am I still protected? Under this order, yes. But there has to be some sort of actual financial impact. One thing is, you lost your job as an option. You lost hours. Maybe your income just went down, like if you are a business owner and you're not making as much money. The last one on there is, what is the word they use? Extraordinary out-of-pocket medical expenses. That just means you got hit with some big medical bills. You know what I mean? If any of those are true, and that's the reason you're behind in rent, you still qualify. The next part, I'm using best efforts to make timely partial payments according to my circumstances. That's an area where a lot of people kind of start to freak out, because there's a lot of issues there. Some people's landlords don't accept partial payments, and they're like, well, what do I do? And once again, the key words there are best efforts. If you're trying to make the partial payments, but then your landlord's not taking it, that sounds like best efforts to me. You're not the problem. The landlord's probably not the problem there either. That's one thing I want to take a second to address. I hope that everyone here remembers that everyone is struggling right now, not just tenants, not just homeowners, but landlords are struggling too. The banks are struggling too. You know what I mean? Everyone is struggling right now. Imagine not being able to pay your mortgage, and as a landlord, imagine not being able to pay your employees. The idea is, have compassion for one another. Remember, we're all suffering right now. We're going through some hard stuff as human beings, not as landlords, not as tenants. This is a human problem. That's my quick plug on that.
No.
So the next part here is that if evicted, you'd end up homeless. There's a little bit more to it, but the bottom line is, you got no other options. You're swearing you got no other options. Those 5 statements, I think, are true for the majority of us that are behind in rent right now. Some of them are a little harder to prove than others, but from experience, everyone who's willing to sign this document and give it to their landlord to try to use it to protect themselves better be prepared to defend all of these statements, because we've seen that landlords are actually questioning the veracity of some of these statements and even asking the judge for hearings to
Wow.
prove the
Oh.
veracity. Yeah, and we've seen some tenants lose their cases because they couldn't prove some of these things. Now, don't get terrified that these are the ones I'm thinking of in my head are extreme. Like I had a client who he wasn't paying the rent. He signed this document, gave it to his landlord, but his landlord's like, "I'm not sure I believe you because you just got a new Cadillac. That's weird."
Really?
I don't buy it.
That's a little bit of a sign.
Yeah, it was a bad sign. And so that's just an example of why a landlord might question it and they might ask for that hearing. The idea here is try to prove these things. And so some options are maybe if you have a letter from your job when you lost your job, get a copy of that. Have it ready now. Don't wait till there's a court action and then you have a small amount of time to act. Do it
Right.
now before you've even
Right.
get. If you have a way to prove you've applied for government programs, gather that. So like if you get confirmation emails, if you have applications on paper,
Okay.
whatever you've done, be ready to prove it. And then the other ones like your income, that mean you got bank statements, you can get,
Yes, yes.
you're a business owner, you can actually use your, I'm blanking here. Your
Profit and loss or business
Profit.
checking account.
Thank you. Perfect. And then, yeah, so the idea is just be prepared to prove those first 5 statements. Now, this is probably both the most important and maybe the less fun part about this is the limitations of the order, the things this order doesn't do. And that when you sign this, you're swearing you understand. This order won't actually protect you from Florida law or any state's law. That's actually something to keep in mind. What I mean by that is in Florida, the laws are pretty strict about not paying your rent. As
Right.
long as the landlord follows the law, they can send you the 3-day notice that everyone's hopefully heard of. And if not, please call our office and we'll talk to you about it. But everyone can still be served with the eviction if they fail to comply with the 3-day notice. In fact, at least here in Orange County, you can lose your case. The judge can rule against you and say, look, we're really sorry about what you're going through. We get it, but the law's the law and you're going to lose the case. And we're going to give the landlord that judgment for possession. But so long as you've actually signed the CDC Declaration and you've given it to your landlord and you can prove all of it's true, most of it's true. Some of these things are almost impossible to prove, like proving that you have nowhere else to go. How are you going to prove that? But you know what I mean? Just be prepared to back it up. So long as you've done that, then pretty consistently throughout the country, and certainly here in Orange County, they won't physically remove you from the property. They won't let the sheriff come out there and give you that writ of possession saying you got 24 hours. Someone mentioned it earlier. I think it was BJ. You mentioned
Yes.
the 24-hour writ. So yeah, that 24-hour writ's the scary part of the action. That's the part that everyone dreads because once you get it, it's real. It's very real.
24 hours.
Yeah.
Yes.
24 hours. And if after
Someone mentioned that they were unable to get in contact with someone at the legal aid office. So is there an email or
when were they calling? You know what? We won't even get into that. Here's what we can do. If you email info, so info, I-N-F-O, info, actually I should put this in the chat, info@legalaidocba.org. If I can get the chat to open up for me, I'll type it in there. That's an option. You can always do it that way. I do encourage people to try to call because we probably, just like anyone else right now, are getting pretty backed up.
slammed?
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Everyone here on this panel knows what we're talking about. More than ever,
Yes.
anyone who's helping the community is really, really struggling right now. There is a huge flood of need for us right now. I'm still trying to get the chat to open.
Well, while you work on the chat, we got to get some other questions in for our Lyft people. So
Oh,
BJ,
please.
Sandra, bang them out.
Well, what is the fastest way a tenant can get evicted in Florida? Because you said it was so strict.
The fastest way to get evicted in Florida is to do nothing, is to stick your head in the sand and pretend nothing's happening. There's no faster way to get evicted. So for example, if you get served with an actual eviction complaint, like if you get a court document telling you someone's suing you for eviction, please do not hide from that, because you only have 5 business days. Cameras this way, 5 business days from receiving that document to file your answer with the court. And if you fail to, you could lose automatically. Don't panic. If you're one of those guys and gals who's that's already happened to, do not panic. That doesn't mean you're doomed. That's not the case at all. In that case, at least file your answer like tomorrow, like ASAP, and do the CDC declaration. If it applies to you, sign it, send it to the judge, file it in your court case. You don't even have to leave the house to do that anymore. There's an e-filing portal now in Florida.
Oh.
You can open
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
it's
Camilla, what does that answer look like? What do you file when within that 5-day period?
So we at our office provide an answer form with instructions that is designed to function as an answer and allow for a lot of different scenarios, a lot of different possibilities. But if you can't get that from us, at the very least, file an answer saying, I'm invoking the protections of the CDC. And that language doesn't have to be exact. At least file an answer saying, I acknowledge this. Here is my CDC declaration. I've given it to my landlord. Please don't evict me before December 31st. And that should, in many cases, do the trick. It won't always, without getting too much bogged down in law, we call it, without getting in the weeds, without getting out in the complicated stuff.
Right.
There are some times where if a landlord has a particular type of attorney, they might actually, and this isn't a bad thing. This is just, they really, I'm kind of jealous of these attorneys because they actually understand constitutional law. There is some places where they're questioning the constitutionality of the CDC order, and there are some parts of the state that actually are looking to say that this can't be enforced because it's unconstitutional. I don't agree with that. Many attorneys don't agree with that, but there are those that do. And honestly, law is one of those things where it's okay that everyone doesn't agree. In fact, that's good, because if everyone thought the same thing all the time, we would have a robot system with no room for improvement, no room for growth. So the idea here is file an answer, reach out to a legal aid organization to see if they can help you out. And actually, I don't have it right now, but I promise you, I will get you a website where you can go. I wish I'd planned for this. There's a website you can go to have an answer designed for you. It basically interviews you. It was created by the Jacksonville Area Legal Aid. They're amazing. They created a really good application where it asks you questions, it interviews you and it creates the answer for you. And that's a perfect thing that you can try if you have no other option.
That's
Great.
awesome.
Yeah.
I'll get you the link, I promise. And don't let me forget. Someone remind me.
Camilo, what happens after December 31st?
Great question.
Yeah, are we going to see a lot of U-Haul trucks
Yes.
on January 1 zipping up and down these streets, or people on sidewalks with paper
New
bags?
Year's.
What's going to happen on January 1?
January 1. If there hasn't been an extension to the CDC order or any other type of relief released by whether it be the federal government or local government or whatever the case may be, if nothing happens, then come January 1st, cases are going to move forward. In the parts of the state, or really the parts of the country where the cases are allowed to go to the last step. One example is Orange County. Here in Orange County, these cases, they can go to the next to last step. You can literally lose the case. They just won't remove you physically from the property until after December 31st. In those cases, come January 1st, if nothing changes, they could enforce those writs. It could be back to the old times where the sheriff comes out, they serve you with the writ, you got 24 hours to get out. And it's important to know that if it comes to that, if they actually have to remove you with the writ of possession, the sheriff can physically remove you, and the landlord can actually take your stuff and basically throw it to the curb. And then whatever happens to your stuff after that, neither the sheriff nor the landlord can be held liable for it. So please.
Can they lock your stuff in
Can
if
they?
you're outside of that 24? Because you should have been out. So therefore, if you didn't make that timeline, then they can keep it and auction it off,
What they're supposed to do. I think what you're thinking of is how it, and I think you're right. Don't quote me on this, but But I want to say if that happens to you and you're renting storage space, then I think that is.
Yes, storage space, they do
Yes.
that.
Storage wars.
Exactly.
Yes, right.
So
That is
So-
definitely true. You do
yeah,
not.
that sounds right to me. I don't practice in storage wars law, but I do. Landlord tenant. And in landlord tenant, what the landlord's actually supposed to do with that property is take it out to the curb, basically remove it to the streets and wash their hands of it. And then it's on the tenant to figure out what to do with that stuff. So I know it's really stressful, guys. I know that it's really scary, but whether you're using the CDC order or not, if you're in the position where you think you may get evicted or you have a court case open or whatever the case may be, if you're behind in rent, start making plans now. Start making moves now. There's a wonderful resource that I hope everyone by now has heard of, 211. Call 211 but be very specific with 211. A big problem we have with people calling 211 right now is, well, first of all, they're slammed, just like all of us. They're slammed. People need help. The other thing is people call and then they just kind of unload their whole life story on them. That's not helpful because they need to know what you need. If you have them on the phone for half an hour telling them your life story, they'll send you to me again. They won't know what to do with you. So have a specific request. If you're looking for rental assistance, call and ask for rental assistance. They might not have it, but at least they know what you're looking for. If you're looking for shelter, that's what you should be calling for. Let them know you need a shelter come January 1st.
But what if
Camilla?
I gave the declaration to my landlord? Can I still be evicted before the 31st?
This is when this is my least favorite answer to give people. But I find myself giving people this answer all the time, and attorneys do this all the time. And I'm sure you guys are going to be mad at me right now. It depends. It depends. It really depends. We'll go over some common reasons why you could get evicted anyways. Let's say you're not even being evicted because you're not paying the rent. Let's say your landlord's evicting you for a completely different reason. It has nothing to do with the rent. I'll give you a dreadful example. I had a sweet little old lady as a client who, I want to say it was last month. She lives in a property where there's very strict lease agreements that say in the lease, no smoking. The community itself is a non-smoking community, and the community itself has an association that has rules that say no smoking. They caught her smoking earlier this year. They gave her a warning, which was a kindness. Well, okay, arguably that's what they should have done. That's a bit of a gray area. Usually, unless it's something really bad, they're supposed to give you 7 days to stop doing whatever it is you're not supposed to be doing before they try to evict you. But here's the problem. Within 12 months of that first occurrence, her son got caught smoking another cigarette. And within 12 months in Florida, if you commit the same violation of your lease and you've been warned properly the first time, the second time's no warning. The second time your lease is terminated, it's a 7-day notice to vacate.
Wow.
That's smoking cigarettes, right?
Wow.
That's not saying smoking
was-
something
Smoking
that
other stuff or a cigarette?
so medical.
In her case, it was actually cigarettes. In her case, it was cigarettes. But keep in mind, her lease agreement specifically said, and she knew this when she moved in. I mean, there was like a big old sign on the property. The association says this is a non-smoking community.
Oh.
I am not happy with the result, but I understand why it happened. And what sucks is that the CDC order does not protect you from that. It does not protect you for an eviction for violating your lease. It will protect you from the final step of the eviction if the reason you're being evicted is non-payment and you've signed the declaration and everything on it's true. I know that's a lot of ands, but that's usually how law is. It's always this and this and this and this, if not maybe that.
Wow.
I have a really quick question, and you touched on it a little bit earlier on the other slide when you're trying to establish that you actually are a resident, and you touched on, if you're in a hotel, you can't necessarily prove that you're a resident. It's one of those gray areas, but it's probably going to go on the way of the landlord or the property owner. I know someone very personally who's now staying in an Airbnb on a month-to-month basis. And since it's a new thing that's taken place, I think it's worth, touching on if there are any new legislation or any new laws against that or for it, or if you find yourself in a position where you are going month to month, then your job dries up and you can't make the same obligations that you agreed to initially. Please expound if you have any.
Wouldn't that still be considered as a hotel?
That's what
Once again, the terrible answer that I hate giving. It kind of depends. It kind of depends. So here's a few tips on if you're in that position. If you're in that position and you've been there a good amount of time, and in Florida law, the number they're looking for is 6 months.
Oh.
They're looking for 6 months. If you've been there 6 months and you've got, like, you're receiving mail there, your kids are registered to go to school there, you've got, it's on your ID card, cameras this way.
Oh yeah, you residents.
That sort of stuff. If you've got all that, maybe you are actually a resident. Maybe you're actually a residential tenant. But if you just moved in yesterday and you pay daily, it's super unlikely. It is very unlikely you're going to be afforded protections under Florida statute, chapter 83, part 2, which is what determines how landlord-tenant law works, who is who is a residential tenant. So the idea is, if you're in that situation, you especially should be reaching out to a legal aid organization to see if they can help you figure out whether or not you are afforded protections as a tenant, because that's a messy area. That's what some of the more messy cases that I've seen recently were exactly that. First, to even try to apply the CDC protections, we had to prove they were a tenant. And that was a whole thing. We had to get them to get a bunch of documents. So maybe one thing to take away from this is documentation is really important. And it's something that you do not want to wait to the last minute to get your documents now, before there's even a problem. Start getting them now.
Okay, somebody asked, is there a difference in the counties? Like, does Seminole County have something different than what Orange County does?
In regards to, if we're talking about how the CDC order is applied, yes. I can't tell you how every single county in Florida or across the country is handling this, but there is definitely variations. Some counties have administrative orders that direct the clerk of courts how to handle this type of a CDC order. How does it actually apply in the court case? Orange County currently doesn't, but we've seen that at least here in Orange County, you can go the distance. The landlord can push it all the way to that final action right before you actually get removed. And I wish I knew the answer for Seminole County. I'm so sorry, I don't have the answer. All you can do in that case is reach out to a legal aid organization that does serve Seminole County and see if they can give you a better answer than I can. I'm so sorry.
All right. Do we have any other questions, Sandra and BJ?
Where can I get more help about this topic? If I'm just tuning in or I'm catching the replay on Facebook Live, where else can I go to? Should I Google, or do I go on Legal Aid's website to learn more about the CDC? Because we're already in December, December 3rd, and the 31st is coming steadily along.
The shortest and best answer is reach out to a local legal aid organization. Who serves your area is going to vary wildly depending on where you're at. But here, and I just put it in the chat box again, there's a link to the Florida Bar's list of legal aid organizations. You should look there and see who serves your county and reach out to them. Some counties have multiple different servicers. And remember, each legal aid organization is vastly different. They practice different areas of law. They have different eligibility requirements. So the idea is exhaust your options. Call all of them that you possibly can. There is some literature out there that you can look as far as the CDC. Like, you can go directly to the CDC's website. I think it's cdc.gov. They tell you what the order does. They even have a little FAQ that kind of clarifies the order. Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of that FAQ because it came out a little after the order, and it clarified things that before they were clarified were helpful to not be clarified. And so now that it's clarified, it's clear that certain things aren't protected. And that's actually something we got to touch on before we got to shut out tonight, that we got to talk about the limitations. Can everyone see this PowerPoint that says, what does the CDC order not do for tenants?
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
This is crucial.
Your time is running out, bro. So,
oh my gosh. Oh no. Okay. So
Good
very
discussion.
quickly,
Good discussion.
Florida statutes still in effect. Eviction procedures, for the most part, are remaining the same unless you're lucky enough to where your local area has an admin order that says otherwise. It also doesn't protect the tenant from the contract, meaning you still owe the rent. It's still a debt. It doesn't go away.
it doesn't just poof,
No.
flutter off.
I
Right?
wish.
Aw,
Disney?
No,
man.
they forgive it. They don't forgive the rent.
There's
They
no
don't-
forgiveness. Okay.
With that you still have to comply with your lease terms. So remember earlier that sweet little old lady with the cigarette?
Okay.
You'll get evicted for not complying with your lease term. And then late fees, if your contract says they're allowed to charge you late fees, this doesn't change that. They can still charge you late fees.
Oh,
Oh,
And
wow.
that is pretty much all the things that I really hope
Wow.
everyone gets the chance to review and kind of learn from. And if anything, if nothing else, just reach out to your local legal aid organization and see if they can help you, because they'll give you individualized information based on your circumstance. You know what I mean?
right.
Carmelo,
I had a question.
besides legal aid, is there another organization, local organization that can help you with this?
As far as housing and the legal aid, or I'm sorry, and the legal parts of combating evictions,
A free resource.
Yes, resources.
Resource-
Pro bono.
Free.
pro bono, gotcha. The legal aid organization around you is probably your best option, but actually now you're making me think. You're making me use the noodle here. So you could try and reach out to different universities. I know that
FAMU.
FAMU. Mhm.
FAMU School of Law. There, I was on a panel with them at 2 p.m. today. They function in many ways similarly to a legal aid organization in that they are a resource, and you can reach out to them and see if they can help you. Thank you for bringing that up. Great question.
Excellent.
What about legal fees? Why is it that legal fees are always put on the person who is the person struggling? So will the landlords be putting their legal fees on these tenants if it's written in their lease?
You hit it right.
Oh, written in the lease. I answered my
I gotta
question.
go read the lease. Gotta go read the lease.
Go read that
Literally
lease.
says.
Go dust it off, people.
Not just the lease, Florida statute itself, Florida statute chapter 83 part 2 that governs the landlord-tenant relationship specifically says that if either party has to go and enforce their rights under that statute and then they win, then the other side might be liable for their attorney's fees.
Well,
So
that's
if I
very
win as
helpful.
a tenant, I may, be able to get my legal fees paid by the landlord.
Maybe.
Oh, maybe.
Maybe.
It depends.
Maybe.
We're gonna get you a T-shirt that says "It depends."
That should be the next episode. Should be part 2. It depends.
It
Yes.
depends.
Right.
So 2021 is gonna come around, and people are going to start ringing our phones because we're a housing counseling agency. Trish is going to get calls people are going to start looking for help.
Yes.
But suppose they're not really knowing anything about, some people just ride the couch circuit. That's number one. The couch circuit meaning you're not on anybody's lease anywhere, but you're still trying to get assistance. Can those things, if I'm sleeping on the couch, can I apply for some money? I'm a resident. I might even be getting mail there, but I'm not on the lease. Can I get some assistance?
Everyone's favorite answer.
It depends.
I will say that the CARES Act, Orange County CARES Act, yes, they did open that up to more of the adults that are in the house, in the home. Like, let's say if you're the daughter and you're staying with your mom, but you suffered as well, and your mom suffered as well, you can apply. But far as the other eviction, yeah,
Depends on the program.
it depends.
Each can be a little bit different, but for the most part, not usually. If you're talking about rental assistance, usually that's reserved for the renter, for the person on the lease.
I have a question. Is this moratorium the only protection that renters have against eviction?
Currently, that is different from what we normally have. So now keep in mind, there are some situations here and there where, like, if the landlord didn't do what they were supposed to do to try and evict the person, maybe there's a way to fight it. Maybe that's why, please call legal aid every time, no matter what, if you're facing this. But for the most part, as far as like new areas of law or like actual moratoriums, if we can really call it that, it's all we got. This is all that's left right now. Everything, like we used to have a governor's order that expired, I think at the beginning of October, it expired. There's a lot of protections that no longer exist. And same's for the CARES Act. As far as evictions go, the CARES Act, almost all of its protections are gone. They expired months ago. Oh my God, I should know this. When did they expire? Months ago.
You're right, months ago.
Mhm.
We're down to the wire.
Okay, well, Camilo, you've given us a lot of great information. I'm so
Yes.
glad that
Yes.
you were so well prepared for this today.
Yes.
Even though it just, everything depends on a lease, it depends on, you know, how you serve the document. We learned about that. And when all else fails, we can always go online and Google things. And we have your number so that we can reach you in case we have any questions. But we will be doing this again, folks. We will be back in January, the end of January. Hopefully, we'll have different information. Hopefully the moratorium or not a moratorium, because we know that Camilla doesn't like that word, that things are extended. So we'll just check back with everyone in January and we'll have another conversation. Is that a good idea?
Yes, that's
Yes.
awesome.
Yes.
All right.
Great.
This
So
was very
that's all
informative.
we have. We're gonna end on time at 7
Yay.
because we are respectful of people's time and energy.
Awesome.
So we're Help CDC, everyone. I'm Nicole
Sandra.
BJ.
Tony.
and the other two.
Trish from the Westlake
From-
Financial Wellbeing Center. And
Thank
thank
you.
you all so much for joining us. We appreciate it. We'll see you in 2021,
Yes.
which
Yes.
is not so far away.
Absolutely.
We'll be back January 28th, 2021. And Denise?
And I'm Denise Smalls from Westlake Financial Wellbeing Center as well. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ruben,
Thank
for all
you,
of your
Camilla.
comments in the
Thank
chat
you for
box.
everyone on Facebook that has put inputs in and watched, or those who are going to be watching the replay. Thank you for coming in, and see you in 2021.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Good night.
Bye-bye.